lawsuit.
The lawsuit that the city is putting out against Andre Wallace and Marcus Griffin and so many other people. So, and you can see it on blackwestjustice.com. So now I'm chilling in the crib. I'm getting ready for the show. I try to like unwind for a couple of hours before the show, and my phone rings, and the caller ID says R. Kelly. I'm like, who the hell called me?
The singer?
Yeah, that's what I thought. R. Kelly calling for a special interview.
So I pick up the phone and it's like, this is former police commissioner Robert Kelly. I'm like, oh, hey, how are you? He said, I got a little statement if you want to run it. And he sent it to us exclusively. And we just posted that, and he's addressing, the lawsuit because he's named in the lawsuit. Mm-hmm. And the crazy thing about that is he got fired like April 2016, like on his 97th day. Like he had 97 days.
2 years ago.
Yeah. So, but he hadn't said nothing all this time, and people have been wanting to hear from him.
Oh, you got the exclusive.
So yeah, Black Westchester got another Robert Kelly exclusive, and I'm quite sure that's not the last we're going to hear from him. And I think it was a foolish move. And I'm going to say it from my mouth, I think it was a foolish move to even mention him when he had been quiet for 2 years and hadn't said a thing. You know what I'm saying? And he used to head up the Westchester Intelligence Center. This dude got paperwork. He know where the bodies is buried. He know what time it is. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, you just woke up another unnecessary adversary who was not going to coming after you. He was busy working on life.
Quiet for weakness.
Right. He was busy working on his neck. You know, he working for the TSA or something like that. Something high up in the TSA, probably making at least twice as much as he was making in Mount Vernon. You know what I'm saying? He was locking that down, staying away from all the controversy and all that. And once you put his name in it, of course he gonna speak. So I think that was whoever was advising that that side of things. I think that was a bad move. I think that wasn't a good look at all. Y'all should have left him alone.
Who do you think?
Well, I don't know who the advisor is. I'm not even going to speculate.
Joe?
I know there's a lot of arrogance and a lot of whatchamacallit going on. And, I know there's probably a lot of backpedaling and a lot of scrambling because all these things is coming up. But I like I said.
Is that a smoke screen because of his case?
Huh?
You think they're throwing out a smoke screen because of his case?
Well, that's what everybody else is saying. And, sometimes the best thing is Dr. Bob just walked up in the building. Kaboom!
Dr.
Guess
Bob
who stepped up
in the
Dr.
house.
Dr. Bob.
Woo!
The doctor's in the house.
Word.
Hey, baby.
The doctor's in the house.
That's something for you.
Yeah, the doctor is in the building. But so I just what would you ask me, Lorraine? I was trying to answer your question.
I said, did you think that it's a smoke screen because of his own case coming up?
Well, that's what exactly was part of Bob Kelly's quote.
He said it?
He says some of that in the quote, and that's why I was pulling that. That's exactly what I was doing. I was pulling that up. He says, as we wait for the computer to come up, it's running a little slow. I mean, like, this is something that happened 2 years ago, and you're just bringing it up now. You know what I'm saying? And it's ironic that you're bringing it up 2 weeks before. Well, here it goes exact quote. It is suspiciously convenient that Mayor Thomas makes this announcement 2 years later, but only 2 weeks before his appearance in court on the corruption charges for which he was recently arrested. It's a desperate measure by a desperate man.
Ooh.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ooh, he came out fighting. I'm scared of him. I wouldn't mess with him.
And the rest of it is to deflect attention from the alleged criminal conduct and corruption charges. When Mayor Thomas was arrested on corruption charges, his electronic booking information listed him as a female. It was a human error that required correction. And I take full responsibility for the similar human errors that for correcting similar human errors. I regret then, as I do now, that Mayor Thomas continues to publicize and manipulate the police for personal gain.
Wow.
It is unfortunate that Mayor Thomas continues to invite legal actions against the city and himself for advancing frivolous lawsuits and litigation. I can't even pronounce that word, but
vexatious.
Yep, that's it. Dr.
Bob is in the
He's
house.
using Dr. Bob words. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, that's
Go ahead, Robert Kelly. He's using Dr. Bob words.
So that was the full statement, though. But it's like, yo, again, that's what a lot of people are saying, Lorraine, that it's it is a smoke screen. Well, a lot of people feel it's a smoke screen to change the narrative and change, because you know what? Whatever that thing was that he put out, and it said something about $6 million or something like that. Now, I had 3 people walk up to me. Oh, man, what's going on up there? Somebody stole $6 million? Like, that's all they heard.
Isn't that the $6 million he's been talking about for the last year? That's been missing?
Well, yeah, because this is supposed to be, he uncovered this in 2016, supposedly. So, yeah.
Okay.
And federal housing funds related to the city urban renewal agency. Now, someone else called me that's a lawyer that said they might not have standing for that money that he's talking about. That might be like HUD or something needs to.
No, they don't. Look, they don't have standing because it's government funded money. And this is what I had to explain to some people. If this investigation would show up that $6 million was missing from a previous administration, right? Then it's not for him to bring a lawsuit. It's for the federal government to bring a lawsuit. And the sad thing about it, and I go back to the city council not doing their due diligence, right? And keeping the community informed. In this age of social media, in this age of mass information, Roberto Apuzzo, the city council president, and Marcus Griffith met with HUD. And there wasn't any money missing the time that they met with HUD. So now, and because of their failure to inform the public on this issue, right, it is allowed to use it now. They are using it as a smoke screen when there's no money missing. There's no money missing. Because if there was money missing, it wouldn't be him bringing a lawsuit to get the money. It would be the feds arresting somebody, announcing an investigation, and throwing out subpoenas. The only subpoenas that's been going out is related to Mr. Thomas's case. Not no money that's missing.
So what happens now? What happens with the case? Does somebody take it? The feds take it?
No, it will go through the courts as usual, and the judge will probably kick it back when all the information is brought forth. But it's more fake news. I mean, I can't put it any simpler than that. It's more fake news for the people that's uninformed, for the people that don't go to city council meetings, for the people that just take it at face value, for those people who hate Ernie Davis and hate this one and hate that one. Just another excuse to point fingers at people that have nothing to do with the situation. You know, and at the end of the day, you know, it makes the city more divided. You're wasting more taxpayers' dollars, right? And nothing is getting done. The city still looks like nothing's getting done. And nothing has gotten done in 2 years. But buffoonery on all ends. Dr. Bob, I digress.
No, you've hit the nail right on the head. I mean, there's a couple of issues that I do want to bring to the attention of the viewers, because in a way, the lawsuit is not only a waste of taxpayer money, but really it is an attack on the fundamental democratic norms of our society. And I've said this once before, but I think it's worth repeating again. One of the real characteristics of our society, of our democratic society, is the peaceful transition of power. In other words, when an election results have been certified, all parties agree that power is to be peacefully transferred and there's to be no vendetta taken against the loser. And one of the things that disturbed me from the very outset about the claims specifically against former Mayor Ernest Davis is that it does smack of an attempt on the part of Mayor Thomas to penalize Ernie Davis above and beyond his electoral victory by setting him up for a possible criminal suit.
Even before being sworn in, like just the whole. It was
misguided. One of the things you really need in order to have a successful administration is a smooth transition of power. You need the assistance of the current administration in order to get up fully to gear when your own administration is launching. And so I, for the life of me, couldn't understand why then Mayor-elect Richard Thomas decided to file a lawsuit against Ernie Davis. It smacks of a kind of disingenuous motives, quite honestly.
He would make certain statements like, the people have picked me overwhelmingly, kind of like deal with it, right? But the problem when I was having, like, dude, when are you going to realize that you won and stop campaigning and start governing?
Oh, he sounds like Trump.
You know what I'm saying? Like, he continued to campaign, and to the point now, it's like he's still campaigning, and instead of governing, like, yes, you won, now fill that role. You know what I'm saying? Like,
well, now he's just trying to save face.
You know what? I don't even know if it's about saving face at this point. It's just, that sometimes, like, they use the example in the Bible. They say, the devil, in the end of the book, the devil loses, right? It's not even about winning for the devil no more. It's about bringing as many people down with him as he can along the way. Like, it's not even about winning for him.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? It's about this, like, taking as many people out on his way down. You know what I'm saying? Like,
damn.
I don't know if it's about saving face or winning right now.
What does Mayor Davis got to say about all this?
Well, we couple of announcements there. You just preempted one of our announcements.
Oh,
Damon K. Jones and AJ Woodson will be on the Ernie Davis show.
Oh yeah, next Thursday
on WVOX on Thursday.
Oh, cool.
Morning. So y'all might want to tune in for that, and when you can hear all that, you get all that in there. And you catch me every Tuesday on the Bob Marone Show. Good Morning in Westchester at 7:20 a.m.
And let's make something clear. Let's make something clear. Like, all parties involved are welcome to come on the People Before Politics show.
Absolutely.
Even Joe Spezio, he's welcome. By all means,
come on down, Joe.
He's welcome to come on the People Before Politics show. I mean, he could. I would love it. I would definitely love him to come on the show. All parties involved are welcome to come on the show. It's not one-sided. This is an invitation. So those that are listening that will go back and run and say, AJ said this, Bob said this, Damon said this, repeat this. They are welcome to come on the People Before Politics show.
And we've invited, we've extended invitations to Spezio, and he was talking about, that's going to be the best ratings we ever have, and all this other stuff. And he was like, whatever it was, we gave him a date, and then, or that date wasn't good for him, and then he didn't have a good date or something. But we've extended invitations. Richard Thomas used to come on the show a lot before he became mayor. From 2014 to 2016, Richard Thomas was on the show a lot. He would sometimes just pop up. You know what I'm saying? When he was city councilman. I have no problem. See, I don't want to sit around and talk to a whole bunch of people that just think like I think all the time. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's good radio when you talk to somebody. You have opposing views, and you have a healthy debate on the topics. You understand what I'm saying? They don't have to get nasty. You don't have to be a fight, but you have a healthy debate, and each side presents their point of view, and the viewers make up their mind. You know what I'm saying? That's good radio. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, anybody, and I give credit for a lot of people who have actually been bold enough to come on the show, knowing that they was like Bob Kelly when he knew that he wasn't exactly our choice, and we thought that, why'd you pick him? Yo, he was asking. He wasn't waiting for he asked me every time he saw, so AJ, when you gonna have me on the show? He came on and he did his thing.
And Bob Kelly is welcome to come back on the show.
Absolutely.
Because I think that show dispelled a lot of false information that he heard.
Right.
That he heard, and I think after that show he gained some respect for what we do on the show, and some respect for what I do in law enforcement. I just don't talk about it, and I'm not trying to be arrogant, but I could sit with the best of them.
Mm. Well, you already are, D. I gotta let you know.
Nice.
I can sit with the best of them.
Good.
I can sit with the best of them and discuss law enforcement, especially how it relates to the black community.
No doubt.
And you know what? And I challenge all who think that I can't.
No doubt.
Even those in some positions. I challenge you. You could come on. We could have a great conversation. You can have a great conversation because you're taught in this racist, white supremacist understanding of law enforcement. So you will always lose, because what I know, law enforcement, the institution of law enforcement didn't teach me. They didn't teach me. So what I know, you don't know. And you're not even taking the time to learn, because look at the black communities. Look at the poor communities. Look at the policies you failed to pass. So we could anybody, and that's if you have a rank in law enforcement in Westchester County or the state of New York or throughout the United States, you could come on the show and we could debate. I have no problem with it.
I got to say this though, and then I'm gonna announce a couple of people. I've actually gone because so I take the camera a lot of times when he's speaking, and I've actually watched people who have never heard him speak before, who did not know him. We went down to this one event. I forgot what college it was, but it was Broadway for Black Lives Matter, and it was Broadway, Columbia, and we sitting in there, and we're looking at this older gentleman over to our right, and he looked familiar, and Damon said something, and he got up and he didn't know who Damon was for nothing, and he was like, "Yo, hold up, did you hear what that brother said?" And he repeated everything. Said it was Chicken George. It was Ben Vereen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ben Vereen.
Yeah, Ben Vereen. Oh. And then he was like, other people was talking. He's like, I want to hear more from the law enforcement officer, right? And and it's just like I've seen people that did not know him, that knew nothing of him, and when he spoke, they were like, wow. And they came up to, I've never heard nobody speak like that before. I've never heard nobody say those type of things before. I've never seen anybody in law enforcement ever say that before. Or, and he run with a cool crowd, like a bunch of other speakers like Corey Pegues and a bunch of other dudes. You know what I'm saying? That they all know their stuff, so I got to give them credit. On the shout out, we got a couple of people on the show. We got Sean Patterson Howard checking us out. We got Ken Bright. We got Ricky Maxwell. We got Kevin Bunch. We got D. Wilson. We got Brenda L. Crump tuning in from Texas. We got Kenny Plummer. And we got Miss Montika S. Jones, the proprietor of Cupcake Cutie Boutique, the dopest cupcakes in the land. You know what I'm saying? So, if you've never been over there, check out, that's my little commercial. If you ain't never been over there, check out Cupcake Cutie on, I think it's 8 South 6th Avenue, down the street from Grace Baptist Church. Definitely the bomb cupcakes. They do catering, they do catering and everything. So, tell them Black Westchester sent you. Word up. So, Reginald Lafayette just joined in.
Hi, Reggie.
Glenn P. Butler, Yvonne McConico, Monique James. What's up, Monique? I ain't seen you in a while. And
Monique is enjoying the good life.
Yeah, Monique's chilling.
Mm-hmm.
Monique's chilling. Yeah. Yo, Monique, we used to see Monique. Monique live upstate now. She be in Mount Vernon more than the people that lived in Mount Vernon. I used to see her all the time. I ain't seen Monique in I don't know when. So she enjoying life. Tawana Chambers says hello. Uncle Frank Trulio Jr. said Uncle Frank's in the house.
Frank.
Damon missed it. Your buddy Reginald Lafayette's in the house.
Hey, Reggie, what's happening, man? Hey, listen, I just that was a call. So Jumaane Williams is on his way.
Jumaane
Councilman,
Williams.
New York City Councilman Jumaane Williams.
Running for a lieutenant governor.
He
right?
is right. He's coming on to announce that he's running for lieutenant governor of the state of New York. Glad that you're listening, Reggie. You know, I hope you tuned in. He's coming on the show. He was just in White Plains at the event with New York State Attorney General Snyderman, and he's on his way. So we'll he should be here about 7:00.
Gail Baxter just joined the conversation. Just joined in. What's up, Gail? And everybody else who's tuned in. We just want to say thank you very much for tuning in. Tell a friend to tell a friend. This is the People Before Politics radio show.
Your wife is listening too.
My wife, hey.
And I just gave her, her a little 45-second commercial.
Oh, a Cupcake Cutie Boutique.
I just gave her a little commercial real quick. You know
That's
what I'm saying?
what's up.
Word up. So, yeah, that's what's up, man. Frank said, Bob, what's up?
Frank, what's up? How are you today? What's up, everybody? Kim Bright, Sean Patterson, Howard, Monique, all the listeners. It's good to be seen again. I know I can't see y'all, but
Did I miss anything?
So Brenda's doing her due diligence from Texas. Deborah Stern will be on the show, the executive director of the Omani Public Charter, and she will be dealing with the Board of Ethics.
When today?
Yeah, she's supposed to be here now.
Yeah, she's supposed to be here now because we got a real tight schedule.
She's going to deal with, if she comes, she's going to deal with the Board of Ethics report that came out.
Well, I hope she comes with a lawyer.
Well, hey, and then
Who?
Deborah Stern from the.
Oh, okay.
And then we have Dominic, and I forget his last name. I can never pronounce it right. Of the Hudson Valley Regional Coordinator of Reclaim New York. That's what it was. I couldn't think of the name of that.
Okay, well, where is everybody at?
He's not supposed to be here till the 7:00 hour anyway. So.
And what's Reclaim New York?
Bob, take it away.
Oh.
Reclaim New York is a conservative-leaning public advocacy group that focuses attention on budgetary spending in New York State and offers up suggestions on how to bring spending more in line with people's incomes.
Mm.
So we'll
and they both were scheduled before you mentioned Jumaane. They were already scheduled for the show already.
Oh well,
but
we'll work it out.
We'll make it happen. Gail Baxter said hello, studio staff: Damon, Lorraine, Dr. Baskerville, and AJ.
Hey, Gail.
Hey, Gail, what's
How are you
happening?
today, Gail?
What's going on, Gail? What I wanted to say. Oh, I think, and it's good that Jumaane's here. He's running for governor. There is after the wake of the last two shootings of black men.
That's what I wanted to address too. Yeah.
Yeah, after the wake of the last two shootings of black men, the California legislature has announced that they are proposing a bill called the Police Accountability and Community Protection Act. And what that bill does, it actually requires police officers to really deeply explain when they use deadly force. Not just my life was feared. Questions: did you take cover and concealment? Did you conceal off the area? Did you call for backup? Situations that we've seen with black men, especially being shot and killed by police, in America, these incidents have become more American than apple pie. So this bill is very unique because they're going to have to explain, did they use the continuum of force before they got to deadly force is supposed to be the last option, not the first option.
Not the only option.
Right. Oh, the only option. Right. So there's something that's called the continuum of force. You use necessary force to stop the force that is used against you. So it goes from physical force all the way up to deadly force. Even presence is a part of the use of force continuum. That's what they call it. They call it the use of force continuum. And deadly force is supposed to be the last option. Even tasers are a part of the use of force continuum. Tasers are not supposed to be deadly force. We've seen the incidents where people have died from the use of tasers. But as far as the use of force continuum, a taser is not deadly force. It's actually physical force because the person that is using the taser is trained to use the taser. If a civilian takes the taser, then that's deadly force because they're not trained. Even with the nightstick, right? If a police officer uses a nightstick, that is classified as physical force because you're trained to use it. If a civilian uses a nightstick, that's deadly force because they're not trained to use it. So there's certain legal ramifications around the continuum of force. But we've seen, and even not just myself, but when you see some of these situations where these young black men are being killed, and women, oftentimes the police put themselves in a situation where it's a shoot or don't shoot situation. Because they're not following protocol. Right? They're not. If someone gets a call of someone has a gun, right? You've seen some of these videos. These cops, before the car can even stop, they're jumping out shooting.
Like
right?
the little boy in Cleveland.
Yeah, definitely. So if you know this guy have a gun, why haven't you pulled up, take cover and concealment, and give orders? So there's a lot of situations. I think this piece of legislation is very good, and as someone who represents a black law enforcement organization and is a member of another one, this is a piece of legislation that we all need to get behind and support in California, and then copy it throughout the other progressive states. It's not anti-police. It's not putting their life in danger. It's not putting anybody's life in danger. It's making sure police are accountable for their actions.
And isn't that a given already? Do you have to make a bill?
Yeah, you have to.
Happen?
Yeah, it's has what have you?
Even when it's been a violation of policy, it hasn't been against the law.
Right.
Eric Garner.
Absolutely.
It was against NYPD policy to use the chokehold, but it wasn't against a law. There was no law for it.
So right.
So the cop can break no law.
Got it.
Absolutely right. And that's the key. We have pushed bills to make violation of policies and procedures a criminal act. Right? But we can't find anybody to jump on that piece of legislation because of the fact that if the taxpayers, right, as law enforcement, we're trained, and that's by the taxpayers' money, right? We get paychecks, that's from the taxpayers' money. We get good health benefits, right? That's from the taxpayers' money.
And when they mess up, they got to pay out?
I'm not finished.
Okay.
Well, it's not even about the paying out.
That comes from the taxpayer money.
Right,
too,
but I'm not even getting into that. I'm getting into the fact of the matter that law enforcement is not a separate entity from government, right?
Right.
We're no different than DPW, than the secretary that's in human resources or anything that. We should be held accountable for our actions. We are employees. See, for some reason, we got to the point that you have government, then you have law enforcement, right? And those things do not fit with each other when it's supposed to. Like, just a matter with the issue with Mike Hannon, right? Who was assaulted by the assistant chief of police of White Plains. Now, she's a city employee, right? The chief of police. She should have been brought up on city employees' code of conduct. But she wasn't. She wasn't even brought up on anything. So she just got away with destroying an officer's career, right? And then he's disabled. So these are the things.
Wow.
So these are the things that happen. But we have to have some type of accountability. But a lot of politicians are scared, because they're scared to be labeled anti-police. And then get back to what AJ was saying. When the city pays out these big lawsuits, that's not the police officer's money. That's not the law enforcement officer's money. That's the taxpayers' dollars. And if you look at some of these, if you look at some of the payouts, right, it's over. It's what New York City has paid out more than some of their department budgets.
Wow.
In payouts. And it's not New York City. You can look all through the big cities in the United States and look at their settlements and judgments and what they're paying out in lawsuits because officers are not following policies and procedure and training.
I have a brother who won a lawsuit because the officers were not following the procedures and they beat the crap out of him, and he won a good chunk of change.
Yeah. And that's right. And you know what? And it ain't about the money. But at the end of the day, right, the municipality will rather settle with your tax dollars than change policy. And then here's another problem is that the victims settle, but there's no case law. Because they're not winning a case. See, we think they won a case, but a settlement is not really winning a case because there's no case law established. So how do you, so now these incidents are continuing to happen. Same incident. Sometimes I don't even have to change my press release. I just change the name of the victim, the date that it happened, and the police department. And I just send it out. Right? But until the system itself and some of these lawyers, instead of taking settlements, go to trial. And I know it's hard on a family because the games that they play in courts, but before you even get to trial, it's 5-6 years because they just play these games. They just play these legal games to just stretch it off, and they keep giving, we could settle with this amount, we could settle, and sometimes the family say, you know what? We're going to take this amount. We got to get this behind us.
And you got them lawyers that we talked about that don't really represent you fully. They in it just for a settlement.
No, because they want a settlement. Oh, you can settle, but you're not. But you're not helping you're not helping the situation, Or even if you take a settlement, say we want a settlement, but we also want policy change as part of the settlement. But people are not doing that, and then the only thing we do when a black person is killed is march and rally. But that doesn't change legislation, and that doesn't change policy. So this piece of legislation here is very important, and I hope it's able to pass out in California. So now we have something to go by to use in other states and even in New York, But I think it should be a criminal aspect to that. It should be a crime to violate policies and procedures.
It should be, yeah.
Absolutely. And credit to the I forgot where Alton Sterling was. What area was that again? I forgot what state that is. But even though the Fed said they're not going to press any charges against the officers in the state, AG's office said they wouldn't press charges. The chief fired the dude.
Right.
You know
and
what I'm
that
saying?
was and that absolutely.
Yeah.
He fired.
Absolutely, you took a life.
Yeah, he fired him.
Right.
And I was like, man, I was writing away. I was like, man, this is some strongly written words. It was a black chief too. It was like, that wasn't no way. I was like, yo, okay. I understood.
Right. But see, we don't have a lot of black chiefs.
Right. I was happy to see him step up and be bold. Even in his statement was very strongly worded.
Well, you think he would have done it if he was white?
Absolutely not. Because I'm going to say it. I don't care. Absolutely, absolutely not. And I'm shocked that some black ones won't even take that step. Because they're scared. So I mean, I hats off to that chief. And then to me the baddest chief of police was in Dallas, Chief Brown. He was a no nonsense chief, and you respect that. He will fire you and tweet about it. And say that say that you have the right to appeal. But when you violate policy, you violate policy. And then we wonder why, there's no trust in the black community in law enforcement. You wonder why? Because there's no real accountability. You can't tell the people to obey the law and you not obeying the law.
Right.
That shit don't work like that. It don't work like that. So, I mean, we have to get to that point. And we need more black cops. Black law enforcement. I'm not saying black cops, but black law enforcement. Whatever your profession is.
Right.
To stand up, because there's issues that's going across this country that black law enforcement is being attacked. I get calls all the time. And we'll get into that one day in the issue of how these unions, these police unions, are failing black officers. The first black law enforcement organization was started in Houston, and they called themselves a black union because they couldn't get no help from the white union. I think we need to go back to those days, because the union, any union, you could pull up any union's bylaws and mission statement, has nothing to do with racism, bigotry, retaliation. That's not the union's job. But black officers face that every day. Every day they go to work. So where did they go? I just posted something on my page where a black female cop was raped by another black cop in Nashville. Right? And the chief of that station said she wasn't credible even after she recorded the guy admitting that he raped her.
Incredible. That's incredible.
That is incredible.
He said credible.
But the problem was, when she did the interview, wasn't nobody standing with her.
That's even more egregious.
That's sad.
That's what pissed me off. Wasn't no union representatives? Wasn't no other black cops? Wasn't no black law enforcement organizations? Wasn't no community people? She was doing that. Wasn't even a lawyer. That's what I was bugged out. She was doing the interview by herself. Herself.
And that's
there's something wrong with that.
That's absolutely.
But see, but I can relate to that when officers are scared to stand up to their fellow female officers. I can relate to that personally.
I wanted to I wrote about the story on page 24 of this current issue out, and I wanted to shout that officer. It was Baton Rouge Police Chief Murphy Paul, and he said that Officer Salamone violated the department's use of force rules. He said these actions were not minor deviation from the policy, and they contributed to the outcome that resulted in the death of another human being. And this I liked. He said, Chief Paul went on to say, fear cannot be a driver for an officer's response to every incident. Unreasonable fear within an officer is dangerous.
Right, absolutely. Oh, wait a minute.
That's you, yeah. I can tell it.
This time it's not me.
So, I mean,
But that goes.
It was strongly worded, though. I mean, like.
But that goes into the legislation,
right?
Right, because the actual legislation it says that under the new law, contextual danger wouldn't be relevant. Officers must justify their use of deadly force. They will have to demonstrate an immediate threat to their own or someone else's life in that exact moment.
Right.
Which couldn't be resolved by other known or less lethal methods. So you're going to have to articulate the moment you shot that man that you couldn't stop the criminal act with other means. That means sometimes you might have to fight, right? You might have to use your nightstick, right? You shoot a man with a knife, dude. I've been cut and scraped by things that look like knives for 28 years in the jail. I don't understand how they pulling out guns unless you're a female, and the man and it's a male dude with a knife. But if you're a man, if you're a grown ass man, and you shooting another man because he has a knife, then you need to get another job.
Or a bat or something.
And you got a nightstick, taser, and pepper spray on your belt. And this man got a knife, and you pulling out a gun. You need to get another job, or you don't need to be on the street. I said it. I don't care, because I've disarmed people myself with knives. And just like my old Warden Burwell told me, if two grown-ass men can't take down one man, then you need to turn your badge in. You need to turn your badge. And that came from my warden. So, I mean, come on, man. Let's get real on this.
Former Mount Vernon police detective and former deputy police commissioner Anthony Old School Mitchell said, "What's up, people, before politics?" Andre Wallace just tuned in. Somebody else just tuned in too. I didn't see. I can't find their name. But yeah, I actually agree. And one of the things that I've always said, and I quote you, when you're in Valhalla, when you're in the county jail, you're in there. You're outnumbered. I don't know how many you're outnumbered by. But it's just you.
It's 60 inmates to one officer.
Right. So now if something go down, you ain't got no gun in there. You got to find a way to be able to handle something, or you gonna get handled.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's an extreme, and you're in a closed setting. It's not like you got an immediate. You know what I'm saying? You in there with them sometimes. So
one of our recommendations is that. From the Lattimore transition team to criminal justice, is that part of the police academy is that police officers will have to work at least 2 weeks within the Westchester County Jail. So they'll learn how to use their mind, they'll learn how to use their verbal skills in talking to people. See, because a police officer, the only time he talks to you is when you call him, right? He doesn't have to. He technically doesn't have to communicate with the people until he's called to communicate with the people. We have to communicate with them 24 hours, 7 days a week. So you have to learn how to communicate, and you have to learn how to diffuse situations verbally, because in the jail you don't have you don't have those weapons on you, right? And you got to learn how to deal with the mentally ill. D. Wilson made a great comment.
Yeah.
One thing that's lacking in the police departments in their training is dealing with mentally ill people. As a correction officer, we are trained. We have training each year to deal with mentally ill, because that's all that's in there. It's like Batman's Arkham Asylum. That's what we have now, because we're dealing with people that are mentally ill.
And they closed all those.
Right, because Governor Cuomo has closed all those mental facilities, and these people are on the street, and they get locked up doing dumb stuff, and they end up in jail. But sometimes they end up being shot and killed. That incident, whether people believe it or not, shouldn't have happened in New York City. Because like Corey said, go back to the basics. Cover and concealment. Did you close off the scene? Did you call in the suspect? Did you give the actual demands? to drop the gun? Did you call for backup? Did you do all these things? And people say, well, it's a split second situation. No, but that's policy. That's policy. Did you follow these steps? That's in there. Those steps. Look, these things are not there just to be letters on paper, right? They're there to save not only your life, not only the suspect's life, but the people's lives that are around them. So, and then they want to put the paper, yeah, he had that, okay, fine. But there's certain things, and I'm not the only one just saying it. A lot of criminal experts say it, that if you want to recognize other people as being, criminal experts, they say that too. And that's part of the problem. Even when former Commissioner Kelly was here on the show, we talked about the warrior cop mentality.
Absolutely.
Right? Mm-hmm. Right, and that's something that's already scientifically, mentioned, in the criminal justice system of the warrior cop mentality. So I'm just not talking out my ass about this, right? I'm referring to things that, they talk about in the criminal justice system, and what we're seeing is part of that. Along with the militarization of the police department, the violation of the posse comitatus. We could go on and on and on and on the problems, but at the end of the day, there has to be proper legislation to address these issues.
No doubt.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir.
I mean, there's not a lot for me to really add. The outcome of a confrontation between a police officer and a civilian should not necessarily result in a civilian's death. That should happen in as few a number of times as possible. And police officers do have a responsibility to make sure they are acting with restraint. And it's our failure, as Dee mentioned, it's our failure as a society to insist that police officers comply with the rules of engagement, because they're not soldiers on the battlefield. They live in civilian society under times of relative peace, and they cannot start from the assumption that every time they confront someone, encounter someone, it's someone who got, a concealed automatic weapon in their waistband, ready to fire off on them. This is not what happens at all. And so, we need to insist on that. And the reason why we see the rash of deaths that we do at the hands of police officers is precisely because our legislature, above all else, has shown an extreme tolerance for this kind of reckless disregard of life on the part of some police officers. And that's the only thing that's going to, is when the legislator insists on following the letter and spirit of the law, that things are going to be improved, and they have to be. It's very important for everyone to recall that major flashpoints of social unrest, civil unrest here in the United States has been confrontations between police officers and civilians that have gone awry and have led to unnecessary deaths. It's very clearly documented, the association between civil unrest in the United States and deaths at the hands of law enforcement. If we want to try to ratchet down the tension, bring down the tension between various racial ethnic groups here in the United States, mostly communities of color who are largely being policed and killed by officers, white officers, this is a perfect opportunity to do so in a way that will both increase the amount of, goodwill between people without compromising public safety. We don't need to unnecessarily kill people in order to have a safe society. It just doesn't make any sense.
You know what? I agree with Dee Wilson's comment. And she said if Corey Pegues was the officer to have arrived on the scene, that young man would still be alive.
Absolutely.
And I have to agree with that. Ken Bright said many are war veterans coming home with PTSD, plus
have a Republican
mindset. Andre Wallace said, "What's up, fellas?" And David Duarte just joined the conversation.
And big shout out to Andre and what's up, Dave?
Dave, Andre.
The brother of Councilwoman Janice Duarte, and big shout out to the city council on passing the Civilian Complaint Review Board.
It did pass.
Well, no, it just passed. It didn't pass the Board of Estimates.
Oh.
They need to put that 30,000, that 25. I don't know. I said my piece on that. But anyway, to have it now in legislation is a big thing. They just got to move forward and making it active and by no means this is not attack on law enforcement. Come on. Cut with the cheap talk. This is not attack on law enforcement. We know that there are many good officers in the many departments of law enforcement that go to work and do the job that they sworn to do, right? But there are some, like you just can't paint the black community with a broad brush,
right? Because
you don't want us to paint police officers with a broad brush. But the problem with the black community and the problem with the police and law enforcement, right? The good ones stay silent. The good people in the community got no snitching, right? And law enforcement has the blue wall of silence. So both the black community and law enforcement have an issue because they're both protecting their own bad ones. Like Captain Dennis said we need to get to we need to get to like back in the day where law enforcement exchanged their bad guys and the black community exchanged their bad guys. Remember have that scene where we switch off the bad guy. Right? So because these culture missteps and in both communities, are not doing justice, for the greater community, and I think that's and I think that's a disservice. So we're not attacking law enforcement at all, but we're asking for accountability, of the bad ones, because if we don't hold the bad ones accountable, then we look bad, And I'm not trying to look bad. I've been in this game for 28 years. I'm not trying to look bad. And it's not about even a color thing, It's about right or wrong. Oh, come on, have a seat. Don't. Yeah. So it's about right or wrong. So we have one of our first guests here. So I don't want to ramble off, but we talked about it. But we'll get back to that. We'll get back to that, y'all.
Absolutely. And then just before we get into the guests, one of the other things that we had on Black Westchester this week, activist Danny Glover spoke very vividly about how racism is in the foundation of this country. And one of his comments that he said was, plantation capitalism is woven into the fabric of this country. The wealth of this country was built around slavery. And, we gotta for those that are not scared to say it, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
I want to definitely big them up. I mean, he's been around for a while, so he's elder. He can say what he want, but it's just good, and we don't have enough that speak out. So I just wanted to give him his props. And Bob, if you will, can you introduce our guest?
So, let me extend a welcome on behalf of the entire People Before Politics program.
So you might as well introduce both the guests.
The two newly arrived guests, and I'm gonna have to do the same thing in both instances. I do know first names, I don't know last names, and so perhaps the easiest thing for me to do is allow you to introduce yourself, what organization you're with, give us a very brief synopsis of what you're here to discuss with us, and then we're gonna have allow the councilman to share his information as well.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I guess I'll
you can
start it off.
And
My
do
name
me a
is.
favor, pull the mic to you.
Oh, sorry.
It moves. Yeah.
Sorry, it's been a little while since I was on radio, so it's getting back into the mix of everything. My name is Dominic Cachara, and I am the Hudson Valley Regional Coordinator for Reclaim New York. And Reclaim New York is a 501c3 nonpartisan nonprofit, and we focus on getting people more involved in their local and state government to try and address the issues we're seeing with affordability issues we're seeing in government, transparency and ethics problems we're seeing almost daily in the newspaper on all levels of government. So our goal is to try and get people more involved in the civic process, get them really engaged with their local elected officials. That way we can open up a dialogue that I think for too long we haven't had open and as robust as it should be.
Go ahead,
Thank
brother.
you.
Oh, my name is Jumaane Williams. Thanks for having me. I am a council member from Brooklyn, New York. Excited to be here, and I am currently a candidate for lieutenant governor in the state of New York.
Yeah,
All right.
that's right. That's right.
Very, very exciting time.
And maybe you could get an endorsement from Reclaim New York.
That's we got the IRS coming after us, and I don't want to push the IRS.
At least you 501c3. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
support.
There you go.
Support.
Well, let me just say welcome back to Westchester, because
you,
you was
brother.
up here and definitely said some profound words at the first annual Westchester Black Political Conference.
Yeah,
You
that
know
was
what I'm saying?
exciting.
Yeah, so definitely welcome back to Westchester.
Thank you, brother.
Yes,
Thanks for
yes,
having
yes. And thank you for all that you do. I follow you. You know what I'm saying? Like you,
me. Okay.
you speak. You know what I'm saying? You speak up when things need. We were just talking about that. Not enough. We don't have enough examples of brothers and sisters who speak up on things that need to be spoken up on. And you know, I think we also were all at the Kaepernick. With,
Kaepernick.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we were
Okay.
down in the
yeah,
city.
down in Brooklyn, down by the Brooklyn Bridge, and you definitely had your words to say about that
Oh,
too.
yeah.
So, thank you for doing what you do.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no doubt. So
So-
go ahead.
Yeah, so Dominic, we appreciate you coming in. We also want to thank you in advance for being so gracious as to share the stage with our gubernatorial candidate and sitting councilman.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Yes.
I'm glad I
this
could share with such a
recent
distinguished
development-
man. I mean, come on. I'm the lucky one here.
Well, so we do have your presentation prepared, and as I already indicated, it focuses on budgetary matters for the state, and so it's apropos because
in.
the councilman an opportunity.
Maybe we can share some insights with you, and you can fix some things up in Albany.
I'm ready. I'm
Uh-huh.
ready.
Are these in order or no?
They should, they should be in order.
Okay. So,
Yeah,
all
I
right.
guess it's going from left to right. I just,
Okay.
Yo,
So-
you got a slideshow, Bob?
I don't have it.
Oh,
That-
you
has-
brought a slideshow?
He has a
Oh, I-
slideshow, yeah.
He made one for me so I could present it. It's an interesting mix we got going on today.
All right, great.
Okay, so y'all just got to tell me when to put on the slides.
Well, why don't you? Is that how you want to begin, Dominic?
Sure.
We'll just start with some slides, and maybe there's about 15 or so slides.
Yeah, I think it's
maybe
about
we'll chime in periodically to kind of pull them apart a little bit and wrestle with some of the issues, and we can have some feedback from the councilman about what he thinks is
Yeah.
appropriate gubernatorial
course.
policy.
Well, I guess the first one is just the logo.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. We're already on the in the races, so we can probably jump forward on this one to the next slide.
And that's small. Y'all gave me a really small slide there. Wow.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know why that showed up so small, but I'll kind of describe what's in that slide so people can kind of understand what's happening in that.
It's not too small.
Yeah, these are
Yeah,
all
I'm
small.
not sure why they're showing up so small.
I don't.
But
I must confess, I did the conversion to JPEG. I don't know if they shrank when.
Well, there's the cover of Black Westchester.
well, that's the right size. So we're
Yeah,
still in the
right.
good ball game.
Right.
We're still doing things right here. But I guess I mean we can kind of do most of the presentation without.
We could just talk about because the slides is too.
Yeah, it
Slides is too
seems.
small.
Yeah, it seems
Wow,
like
we got
it.
that
But
logo up right there.
we'll leave that up on the screen. But
Let me take that down so they can see
Yeah.
the speakers.
a lot of what Reclaim does is we try and put out materials and provide resources to regular citizens trying to get more involved in the process, more involved in their local government and what they're trying to achieve, whether it be bringing about reforms like many individuals in this community are and throughout Westchester and throughout the country right now on social justice, or if it's fighting for some kind of reform in maybe the civic process itself. too often we're seeing corruption going on in local governments, and of course up in Albany, it seems that seems to be a pretty big problem that hopefully this esteemed gentleman will be able to fix. But a lot of times it comes down to people don't have the knowledge base to even know where to start. And that's where we hopefully can kind of come in and provide that resource, show you where is your money going towards? How are your tax dollars being spent? What are some of the reforms that need to be in place to try and stop this corruption we're seeing? So what you can always do is you can go on Reclaim New York's website, Reclaim New York, NewYorkSpelledOut.org, and you can see a lot of the material we have that the slides are a little bit too small to see, but it breaks down, first off, where your money is going. Not just to the governments, both state, local, school district, but also the everyday living expenses that people are forced to pay just to survive. You got your rent, you have, or your mortgage on your home. You have, of course, the taxes on the property. You have your cell phone bill. You have your food bill. You have your gas bill, or you have your metro bill, whatever kind of transportation service you have. And too often, those bills just amass to such a level that people can't get ahead. They're stuck paying all these costs and these expenses. They can't save for their future. They can't save for their children's future. So what we always ask for anybody trying to get involved is simply ask one question. Is your money being spent wisely? If it is, wonderful. If it's not, get involved. Figure out why it's not being spent in the right places. If you want more spent on your parks, or if you want more spent on your education, on your students, instead of some other kind of project going on, instead of building some new building or investing in maybe a new fleet of cars for the police department or the highway department. Figure out where that money is being spent so that you can determine as an everyday resident if that money is being spent wisely, and if it's not, how you can get involved. So a lot of what we're putting out right now and trying to get people involved and really looking at is how their tax dollars are being spent so that they can get involved in the process of changing it that way, and also pushing on elected officials to try and bring in some ethics reform, try and bring in some transparency reform. Because I don't know about you guys, but when you have Albany telling the local government you have to comply with FOIL, but Albany exempts themselves from those same laws of what's supposed to be public records for the public to be able to see. I mean, this is where their money is being spent. Why can't they see how it's being spent and why it's being spent in the ways? So when Albany exempts themselves, there's problems. And there's problems when you see so many elected officials going to jail or being indicted or having these corruption charges.
Indicted.
Indicted. I'm sure you all have a very strong opinion on that kind of issue. But think about this. Just in Albany, we've had 36 elected officials leave office, either because of ethics issues, corruption charges, or some other kind of issue that is in that realm. In the past 10 years. That's 36 officials. You have a higher chance of being kicked out for corruption than you do of getting not reelected, of being defeated in an election. And we think that's a problem.
Say that again. Just repeat that last part again. Just say
Sure.
that.
You have a better chance of being kicked out of office or being forced to resign because of corruption than you do of being defeated in an election.
I hope everybody paid attention.
And that's
crazy.
That is insane. It's crazy to think that the politicians no longer fear the people who are voting them into office and think they can get away with corruption until they get caught.
Right.
But then once they do get caught, and we've seen this happen all over the state and our local communities here, and at the state level, the trials that are going on with both the Republican and the Democrat, or I should say former Republican and Democratic leaders in the legislature, yet nobody is taking up the cause in Albany, or I should say at least pushing far enough to actually get it to go to a vote, to actually make it so it doesn't happen anymore.
Now, Brother Jumaane, as a sitting elected official, right? What do you see is the actual problem, and how do we get reform, and how do we push reform? Because it just they talk about it, but when they get in there, it doesn't happen.
I mean, that's a very good thing. I mean, that's a very poignant point. What I found is we all talk about it,
Right.
and then when we don't be about it.
Right.
And so, and unfortunately, there's no consequences. As the brother just mentioned, we get reelected over and over and over again. And so the only consequence is if you got caught. Now, where I'm from, I think one of the things that has been most beneficial is the reforms that were made to how you run for office. So public financing, I think, has been critical.
Right.
I'm a former community organizer by trade.
Right.
I don't know if I would have. All right, that's what's up. And that was before anybody knew Obama, so nobody knew what it was.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I would tell people I'm a tenant organizer. They thought I was talking about tennis. They thought I was trying to teach them tennis lessons. And so I had to explain exactly what it was. But truthfully, the public financing, I think, is a critical a part here. It gives people like me access to actually make a legitimate run for office.
Right.
And then, two, it helps level the playing field. Now, in a way. As I'm running for lieutenant governor now, it's crazy to me, the amounts of money that are accessible to people who are running for state government, and it's just absurd. And of course, you have to pass some laws for better transparency, but they won't. Like, we don't do. This is about the best things we do are for incumbent. It's like an incumbent protection program, and that's just what it is. And you have to have someone in there who's willing to say something. Like, what if there was a lieutenant governor for the past 8 years that could have pointed out the things that Joe Percoco was doing before we had to get this far? And so one of the reasons I'm running for lieutenant governor, I don't want to be the governor's lieutenant governor, whoever that is. I want to be the people's lieutenant governor.
That's right.
And I want to raise the voice in a different way. Someone, if somebody's doing what they're supposed to be doing, you work with them. If they're not, and these issues need to be pointed out, someone has to say the emperor has no clothes. And I've been doing that for the past 9 years.
And it's wonderful to see when people stand up and come from the community to run for office. Because, as you said, it's like an incumbency protection program that's in place. And Reclaim's always said term limits are a good way to try and at least get more people involved, get more people able to run for office. So at least come up with ideas and have a debate, at the very least, in Albany. Stop just saying, oh, maybe we'll talk about it next year. And you keep on kicking the can down the road. At least allow a debate to occur for all elected officials.
You actually just said the second thing. So the reason I was, the things that help work best in the city, I think, one, were the public financing, two, were the term limits. Now, I think we have to review the amount of terms because it's probably too short, but you have to have term limits there. Like, you can't have people there 40, 50 years.
What did you just say?
You have to have term limits.
Oh, thank you, sir.
I'm term limits. We have to make sure that the amount that we choose is enough to get the job done and enough to push back on the executive. And so we want to make sure that there's more terms than the executive have because that's the way it makes sense. But, it has to be there. I talk about incumbent protection program having beaten incumbent. And so I know how difficult it is. It's about 90% re-election rate. I mean, I was the most high lined everything up for me, and we got in. But I know how difficult it is, and it's ridiculous. And so those are the two things I think that have worked best in the city. We haven't been, unfortunately, immune to the corruption, but it's definitely nothing close to what's happening in Albany. Albany's like the Wild West. It's crazy. And everybody's just looking at it happen. Where do you have two leaders of two different houses, different parties, getting indicted and finally convicted of corruption? Like this, it's insane.
Right.
We always say it's a bipartisan issue. One party does not own it, and one party is not going to fix it. It's going to come from the people rising up and demanding it of all elected officials. And Albany is certainly one case, but also in the local communities as well.
Right.
You talked about the benefits of having it in the city. Why aren't some of the local towns, villages, and cities outside of New York City also taking advantage of using what New York City has already laid out?
Absolutely.
Go
ahead. As far as the local thing, this Wednesday, the city council will be possibly coming up with a vote on term limits, dealing with term limits this Wednesday. So anybody in the city of Mount Vernon who would like to engage that, you have till 3 p.m. Wednesday to sign up at the clerk's office. Call in, sign up, so that you can speak and have your voice heard on your, whether you believe in term limits or not, and get engaged in the conversation. And that's this Wednesday at the city council.
Look, I'm letting y'all know I'm definitely coming.
All right. And
I'll be there as well. So
I'm definitely.
We'll have a party out there.
And I want to say one thing else that's totally off track. First time listener, a good friend of mine, Biz Markey, Welcome to the show.
Biz
What?
is-
Biz is on? What? Yo, Biz, we might have to start spinning some lyrics. Yeah, exactly.
He's been on for a while.
You got what I need.
I just had to throw that in there somewhere because he's tuned in. So
Oh,
That's what's up. That's what's
Marky,
up.
all right.
Yeah, Dominic, this is a little bit before your era, brother.
Oh,
we know your age, so
I got that on my phone. Don't worry.
so back to the conversation. I just had to throw that in there though.
But that's good that brother Jumaane really pushed, because that's what we're trying to get up here in Westchester. Term limits, because it freaks me out that you see cats like they're like 90 years old in the seat.
Mm-hmm.
It's like
Walking around with oxygen masks.
right. It's
You
like,
know what I'm saying?
Come
Till
on,
they die. Literally till
enough
they
is
die.
enough, and then we also find that they use it to get retirement. I mean, if you want a retirement, if you package. Take a test and become a police officer or work. I mean, they use the elected office to get their pension, and you hear, I got to do 2 more and I can get my pension. Really, bro? You ain't. It ain't about 2 more to fix the city or to fix your district. It's 2 more to get your pension.
Well, I think that's a major point. I want to make sure we don't believe just because you're older doesn't mean you can't do the job.
Right.
But
I mean,
there's a few things. One is the complacency that sets in.
right.
That's
Right.
it.
And that's key.
Absolutely.
And
Like
that's
in
key.
Yonkers.
You're not. So you're
Yeah.
there. You're not there to fix the road. You're there to get a
Right.
pension, and
That's
you
right.
know
That's
that
right.
no one's going to take you out. So
Right.
that's another. But the other thing is that disturbs me is that there are generations of people who never had an opportunity to show what they can do.
Right.
Generations of people that never got to infuse the type of leadership, the new ideas that are coming. And I think that's the saddest point, because the complacency allows stagnation of ideas, and
Absolutely.
stagnation of leadership. And there's people, I think we've been able to do some wonderful things that people thought we never would have been able to accomplish, with gun violence, with police reform issues, criminal justice issues, that would not have happened if there was not an infusion of new people to the
Right.
council. So government
Absolutely.
needs that infusion of new ideas.
That's right.
I have 1 or 2 people that I guess they're just tuning in. If y'all can just take a brief second again, introduce yourself, just who you are, what organization you represent.
Sure thing. Well, I'm Dominic Chera. I'm the Hudson Valley Regional Coordinator for Reclaim New York, who is a 501c3 nonpartisan non-profit focused on educating and empowering people to get more involved in their local government.
My name is Jumaane Williams. I'm a council member from Brooklyn, New York. I'm also a candidate for lieutenant governor. You can go to JumaneWilliams.com, JUMAANE Williams.com. Also, I have Tourette's syndrome, so you may see me move a little bit, but everything's cool as a fan. I'm all right.
That's what's up.
That's a good. Let them know. Let them know. Jumaane, what made you run for lieutenant governor?
So when I first got elected to the city council, there was a lot of issues in the district that was important to me.
Right.
And then I realized, in order to affect what I wanted in the district, I actually need a citywide response, and it was important because a lot of other districts were going through the same thing.
Right.
And one of the things one of the negatives, quote unquote, people hurl at me is that you're too much of an activist. Too much activist. And I would say thank you. I appreciate you recognizing that. And I think I can be a productive activist. 2 years ago, City and State, which is the trade magazine for politics in the state, listed me as the second most productive council member out of 51, only behind the speaker. 48
that's
pieces
awesome.
of legislation affecting the bill. And that was important to show that you can be an effective activist legislator. And so I tried to bring a citywide response, whether it was through budgetary or legislative responses, to my district's needs and the city as well, because I realized that other districts were going through the same thing. Then I understood that the issues that the city was going through actually need a statewide response. And as I traveled to places like Yonkers, like Mount Vernon, like Buffalo, Syracuse, I'm realizing that everybody's actually dealing with the same issues. There's different barriers depending on the structure, but I was just shocked that the issues would be the same. The transportation issues, education, policing
can't get
issues,
funding, yeah.
housing,
That's
across housing and homelessness. And everybody was actually pointing to the gubernatorial mansion and this governor's leadership as a lack of leadership on those issues. And I'm like, we have to have a statewide response for these issues. And I ran for speaker of the city council. I knew it was going to be tough because I scare people. That's a real insidery. I'm not an inside politics dude, so I knew that was going to be difficult. But then somebody floated my name as possibly challenging the governor. And I was like, that's pretty dope. I'm just a council member, float away. That's awesome.
Right.
But then as it came down, we saw we weren't going to become speaker. It's like, well, where could my voice have the most effect? So we looked at this position and the viability of it, And so, nobody actually looks at this. Most people think it's a joint ticket. They don't even know that you can primary.
Thank you.
And
Thank
so
you.
we looked at it and said, you know what? This is an awesome position that's not being used. It's power. Just having the bully pulpit and the additional powers that come with it, no one is actually using this. And we looked at that and the viability and said, if not me, who? If not now, when? Let's rock and roll.
That's right. That's right. Bob?
Well, I wanted to come back and ask Dominic a question.
Let's do it.
So, Dominic, we don't have your presentation, but one of the things that you wanted to do is to try to connect the way in which government misfeasance impacts the expenditure of our tax dollars.
Of course.
And you provided us with a nice comparative analysis of tax spending in Yonkers, Mount Kisco, and Mount Vernon, so we could see the relative ways in which our money is being spent. And one of the things I noticed is Mount Vernon, essentially, taxpayers had
You're losing money every year.
No money after it was all said and done. So I wanted to know, could you tell the audience the connection between government corruption on the one side and misallocation of tax funds on the other that very often prevents us from getting the kind of municipal services that we need and that,
the money should be spent towards.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to guess the numbers off the top of my head. I don't have them right in front of me, and I'm just kind of guessing. I'm trying to remember what it was, but I think Mount Kisco had 16% of anyone's income, the median income, at the end of the year they'd have left. I believe Mount Vernon was in the negative at 1%, so you're actually paying more than you make the entire year just to stay there. And it's a big difference when you think about what that means to the future, not just your future, but your children's future. How much you're going to be able to save for maybe college, maybe moving to a new house, maybe going on a family vacation, just taking them somewhere that's going to be different, providing those opportunities. And a lot of times it comes to, like you said, the corruption is causing that money to go higher and higher that they're losing each year, because the money that isn't being allocated for the schools or the roads or the fire department or wherever it needs to go is being pushed into certain individuals' pockets. It's going to these special programs that don't really provide a service to the people, but is still getting hundreds of thousands, if not millions of taxpayer dollars year in and year out. And that money needs to be filled up from somewhere, and it always comes from the taxpayer. That's where the money is going to have to come from all the time. That's the main revenue source for any kind of government. So when you have the money being allocated for programs or to individuals through these slush funds or through these special programs or these handouts that some governments are giving out, it's not going to the right program. So you're going to see this constant rise of the tax rates. And that 2% every year, year in and year out, adds up after a while. So when you are struggling to make your daily expenses, you have to also look at that tax bill and go, how much more can I pay each year if I'm trying to save for a new house, or I'm trying to save for a car, or I'm trying to put money away for my children's future, or, God forbid, someone gets injured and you have health bills now. And you start combining all of these taxes and all these fees and all these everyday bills, and it comes down to, well, why is the government keep on taking more and more of my tax dollars when I need to pay my own bills and I can't do that now? And you're going to try and ask for another, Mount Vernon last year, another 5% in my taxes to pay for these raises for certain individuals that probably shouldn't be getting them when the productivity in the city isn't going the way it should be. Those are the questions that really need to come up and need to be asked. And when you have those questions at least being discussed, it oftentimes leads to a government rooting out that corruption within itself, because they realize people are paying attention. They're listening, they're watching, and they're going to find out about that corruption that's occurring, and they're going to get indicted if they don't clean it up now.
I think people will be shocked, like literally, you hear about it, but surprised at how much of decision-making is made not because of what's right and wrong, but because of some things that was talked about. I mean, one of the things that's amazed me the most is how difficult it is just to do the right thing. Nothing more. Just a thing that everybody agrees on is still difficult to do. There's several reasons for that. One of them is this influence of money and the possibility for corruption, because I'm unfortunately making a decision that's based on who funds me, who funded my last campaign, who's going to fund the next campaign. Sometimes the decision's made, I'm funding you to move this money to that project. So now I can't fix the road. I got to go into that project because if I don't fix this project with that taxpayers' money, this guy's not going to give me a big check that I'm going to get before. And that's one of the reasons public financing would change some of that. Change some of the way the money is being floated around. But decisions are made on a regular basis. Budgets are made on a regular basis. So often not based on what's best for the people of the city of New York. It's based on what's best for me as an elected official, where I'm trying to go next, and who funds me. I've tried my best, and I know there's people out there, so it's not everyone, to reject that. I didn't get elected to get reelected. I got elected to do a job, and I hope that job gets me reelected. And that's what I've lived so far for the past 9 years, trying to cause as much mayhem and trouble as I can to the status quo in the city. And that's the mentality I want to bring as a lieutenant governor.
You got a couple of comments for you. Tanya Connor says, big shout out to Jumaane Williams for showing up to the Black Women's March.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you so much. So, hashtag 100 Sisters. And Michelle Harris, whose screen name is Panama Shell, she said, Jumaane has been working for the people for years. She said, and then she said, "Hi, Dominic." And she said she's listening all the way.
10 years.
She said she's listening all the way from sunny Las Vegas.
Oh, that's what's up. Peace.
Yeah.
Say, can we take the radio show that way? Let's make this road trip.
You know, I as a civil service worker and someone who represents labor, I was a union delegate for 13 years for Westchester Coal. One thing I don't like is the use of the workers as scapegoats for the mismanagement of the city budget. I understand the need for taxes, you know, because you have to pay people to do the work. But part of that is where I think a lot of union leaders fail to address that there is actually misuse, you know, and then we are always, when we want to try to get a little 2%, you know, maybe the city is like 2%, between 1.5, 2, because y'all have big departments, right? Up here is 2% to 3%, you know, yearly raises, and you know, even that, you know, a law enforcement officer without overtime can't live in Westchester. You know, I'm buying a home in Middletown because it's just not worth the money. You know, and my wife is a detective, so we make good money. So the whole thing is, you know, I don't like when employees are used as a scapegoat for higher taxes, you know, or a scapegoat to keep the taxes low. We don't get the raises, the people don't get the potholes fixed, but people have to pay. Taxes is part of it. It's just I think more so that it's the mismanagement of the taxes, and to cover that they raise taxes.
Well, you know, I mean, so it's easier to point to the worker as a problem than the dysfunction that is being talked about here. So scapegoating is always easier. And you know what was the budget? 168 billion that we just passed. So when people say we don't have money, they mean we don't have money for the thing you're talking about.
Money's there.
The money is there. It's not a.
That's so true.
It's not a fact about we don't have the money. It's a budget is obviously a priority. It's a priority list, and so your thing is not a priority.
That's right,
and it should be. And workers' pay is particularly important because people need to live. And Westchester Yonkers folks are getting their taxes, and the question is, where is it being spent? Unfortunately, again, it's being spent on where the person who's funding that elected official is pointing and telling them, you need to put this there or you won't get reelected. And that's one of the reasons, I think, another reason why term limits are important, because you need to have a finite time where you're going to be there. So that's going to help you make some better decisions.
Say it again. Just say it again for the people in Mount Vernon.
You should have a finite time that you're going to be there. I'm not going to decide what that time is, but you definitely should have a finite time of when you're going to be there. One, so you can give somebody else a chance, but two, complacency doesn't sink in, and you can make some better decisions. People get brave on their way out. You know, some things they wouldn't have done when they came in. Now on the way out, they actually might make decisions that are based on what's best for the people.
Because you know you ain't coming back.
Right. You know what? I want to have a challenge to all elected officials that's listening to the show, right? And that's in Westchester. You know, Paul Feiner. You know, I have a lot of respect
Absolutely.
You know, for Paul Feiner, who's the town of Greenberg supervisor, and he gave us a little jewel that in Greenberg, right, they're not allowed. The elected officials are not allowed to take money from developers. That's a
Tell out the governor.
That's what I'm trying to tell you. So I'm putting a challenge, you know, and this is a challenge to I live in Mount Vernon now, so I'm putting a challenge to Mount Vernon. Pass the same legislation as Greenberg that you can't take money from developers.
It changed the game.
It will change.
Yonkers will go
It will
nuts.
change the game. Yonkers too. You know, listen. I'm going to talk. Look, the first meeting I'm having with Mike Kadar, it's like, yo, dude, y'all got to take. Y'all got to pass the same legislation as Greenberg. Greenberg has set the standard, and it's been under the radar for years until Paul Feiner said, "Hey, man, we can't take money from developers. It's against the law with our charter."
And you're seeing that all throughout the state, too. Not just with developers, but you look at some of the regional economic development councils that are coming from the state. So these organizations that are propped up by the governor and by the Senate and by the Assembly are given this massive authority and this massive budget. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars to basically pick winners and losers of who's going to be able to get this massive amount of money to go start a business. Instead of making it so that entrepreneur who has been having this idea of opening up that restaurant down on Main Street or opening up that craft boutique store, whatever it may be, has the opportunity. Instead, it's going on to these regional councils and even on the local level, the IDAs, that these groups get to decide who's getting the money. Who's going to be the winners and losers?
And it's not even transparent.
No.
That they're making.
Not
So you
at all.
don't even know what to do better for the next time.
Exactly.
Right. Councilwoman, White Plains Councilwoman Nadine Hunt Robinson, she says she agrees. Public finance can level the playing field so everyday people can run for office, not just the well-off. And she said, take private money out of the elections by passing public finance legislations locally and nationally. And Michael Garrett Jr. said, Mount Vernon is the biggest mismanagement of taxpayer dollars he's ever seen.
Who's in that?
Michael Garrett. Garrett.
I want to amplify a point that you made, D, because too often when we have the discussion about what's the appropriate tax bill for the citizens, there's a call for tax reductions, and we need to be very clear what the ramifications are likely to have on various communities.
Absolutely.
And it has to be noted that for the African American community in particular, I do not know so much about the statistic for Latinos, but employment in a government agency is one of the most sure-footed routes into the middle class for African Americans. And so an attack and a scaling back of public financing of our public budgets indirectly can have a very negative, adverse impact on the African American community at a time when we are calling for ways to shore up the middle class of all racial and ethnic groups. So we have to be mindful of that. And this gives me an opportunity to note that one of the most harmful ways in which government monies are allocated is through the rise of what's recently been known as crony capitalism.
Yes.
Sort of short-circuiting of market mechanisms when you have campaign financiers who fund politicians' campaigns in return for promises of favorable business decisions. This is especially important in Mount Vernon because we have seen over the past 2 years Mayor Richard Thomas make a number of decisions with respect to personnel for offices like the IDA, for the funding of lawsuits against his political enemies, all of which and to favor his campaign financier, Joe Spezio, let's be honest, all of which has had the net effect of driving up the cost of the tax bill for city residents and not giving us anything in return. That's been all about the Thomas Spezio machine looking to shore up its political and financial stranglehold over the city. And so we want to say that. And I guess this leads me, Councilman Williams. Correct, right? Yeah, I was thinking on my feet. I didn't feel as sharp today. I hesitated the first time out. What kind we fought a really lonely battle, and members us in the studio, our allies, supporters outside, but we feel like it's been a really lonely, almost futile battle, quite honestly, to rein in the corruption. Do you have any extra proposals?
Yeah, vote people out.
Well,
no, I mean it's
right,
real,
right.
We reward bad behavior repeatedly, and that's a frustration.
Absolutely,
that's right.
And that's another thing why I like term limits, because regardless of what anyone says, the psychology of name recognition is a very, very, very powerful thing.
Absolutely.
And so it's very hard to vote out. And I am speaking as somebody who has beaten an incumbent. It is very, very difficult. And so we shouldn't have to fight back against the psychology of people. You just have term limits, and then you have to worry about that. Right. But we should stop. The other thing that's amazing, people will tell you how bad the system is except for their representative.
Right.
So if you look at Albany, look at Congress, look at the Senate, it's terrible except for mine. So it's hard to change it if everybody thinks it's bad except for theirs, and then they keep putting their person back in. But I have a feeling that 2018 is going to be a magical year. I really believe that, because we're in a new time. The only good thing the orange man in the White House has done with his orange madness is start to organize people, and people who have never paid attention are paying attention now. And so my hope is that will materialize in the voting booths. And people like myself, I got to keep plugging Lieutenant Governor. Me in the Lieutenant Governor position will shake up the whole system. I believe that. Please believe that. So that I think something like that will be amazing. But even on a local level, what's important is that too many people never paid attention to local politics. They come out and vote for the presidential and leave it alone.
That's right.
Absolutely.
That's
in places like New York City and some of the more progressive areas in the state, if it wasn't for the local government, the orange craziness would have already seeped through. And so people, I hope, are beginning to understand those local elections. You got to come out, and those folks who are doing what you're saying, you got to vote them out, or at least vote. Even if they don't get out, if they see a block of people come out,
that's right,
they will begin to pay attention. Please believe that.
I just want to jump in, and maybe you might have, Dominic, you might have this whole IDC thing, right? This whole IDC. What is your? I'm going to come to you next, because I think you in line with a lot of people of what's going down. But Dominic, I don't know your views. So what is your take on the whole independent Democratic Conference and how they're playing both sides with the power, and it's also affecting legislation that's passed?
It's certainly affecting legislation. It's affecting the work in Albany, and I almost give them props, because they were able to take this small group of people and create a massive amount of power for their constituents. So whether or not you like what they did or don't like what they did, they were able to leverage their positions to get a lot more for their constituents. Whether it was good for the state, whether it was bad for the state, I honestly couldn't tell you, because I'm not a resident in any of their districts. Right. As someone who wasn't part of it, it was disheartening to see that Albany once again did Albany's things and kind of had this delve into petty politics instead of addressing the issues that everyone's dealing with. But I'm hoping that now that maybe that the IDC is gone and the Democrats are
allegedly
coalesced. Allegedly. I mean, the Senator Felder is still caucusing with the Republicans, so it's still kind of split. There's no IDC anymore. Hopefully business will actually be more productive now that you don't have a small group kind of holding the state hostage. It's going to be interesting to see. And I do want to talk on the voter turnout, because that is a huge problem in the state.
Right.
And a lot of people don't realize this. In 2014, less than 25% of New Yorkers voted. Less than 25% of the people eligible to vote showed up to the polls. So I highly encourage anybody who is even thinking about it, get out there and vote. And not just for the presidential election, not just for the governor's election, but for your local elections as well. Your school board election is one of the most consequential election there is on your tax bill than anywhere else. And so few people go out there and vote. Get involved in it.
And if you're interested in criminal justice reform and issues like that, the one position that everybody forgets and is probably the most powerful are your DAs.
Absolutely.
People don't pay attention to who their DA is. They are the gateway between the reforms we want to see are implemented in a fair and just way or not. And people just don't pay attention. That's another local election.
That's
in
right.
terms of the IDC, I would say it was bad for the state, just off the bat. When I heard that they've quote-unquote united, and there's a song that came to my mind when I heard it. I heard it all before, which is the truth. And it's like, people paying attention. The governor spent 7 or 8 years saying that he cannot reunite them.
Right.
And in the dead of night, he waved his hand, and
Yep.
they reunited. The best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. And so, I will look at the past behavior of everybody, including particularly the governor, who flip-flops. He puts on a progressive coat today, he'll take it off tomorrow, depending on what is popular at that moment in time. I am convinced that this happened not because they were concerned about having Democratic votes in the Senate. They're worried about voters in September.
Right.
So this would not have happened if voters did not start speaking up and saying, we are going to vote people out
Right,
of
the
office.
midterm
That's
elections.
right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So that's why, just as we spoke about, voting is critically important. This would not have happened if voters, and it takes a lot of work, but voters started coalescing
That's
and
right.
primarying people, say, we will vote you out of office. The governor has a primary himself now, is going to shove him to the left. I'm primarying the current lieutenant governor. These are things that people care about. This just shows you how important it is for people to see that we're going to vote.
Right.
But there are tremendous amounts of issues that they just caucused with the Republicans.
That's right.
And either prevented things from moving forward or ridiculously watered down things came through.
I want to ask you one. In the local election, we're having for filling George Latimer, who's the county exec seat, Shelley Mayer and Jill. What's Jill's last name?
Lorraine, that's being
I'm sorry.
directed to you.
I was
Kilograms
reading
and
what Brenda's
Kilograms?
writing to you.
Okay, one of the things that's being said is that the race is turning into an ugly race, but each of the candidates is saying they're not doing it. It's the PAC that's supporting them spending all this money. You know what I'm saying? What is your position on
So I will, as a candidate, I will say it is true that PACs sometimes do things you don't want them to do, but you could also speak out against it. So if you're saying that they're doing something you don't want them to do, you could tell them not to do it. The truth is, it's probably a very tough race, and if there's something that's beneficial to one candidate, they're not going to say much about it. I mean, that's just the facts of what I try to be as honest as possible. So that's been what's helped me go up. But it's also many people say I might be capped because I'm too principled. And, I'm all right with that.
And that's a sad thing that we have principles as being something that's considered a limitation.
Yeah.
And principles should be something that's held up to be as a beacon.
You would think.
Here.
If you haven't been to Albany, I guess.
Yeah.
Once
you go to Albany, it's like
not even
principles
just
get in the
politics.
basement.
I was told early on that I would never make it big in the music business because I was a nice guy. I was too honest. Like, for real. Like, for real.
Imagine
Like, so you're never going to make it. You're
be
never
legit.
going to be really successful.
When I go to sleep, I got to deal with the Most High and the ancestors.
Right.
That's it.
That's it.
We're coming kind of close to the show. I wanted to give you, is there anything, I know we weren't able to do the whole slide thing.
Yep.
Is there anything that you wanted to explain about the organization or present, or how can people reach you, or
Sure.
all that kind of, just.
No, I always tell people, find us online. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're online on our website, reclaimnewyork.org. New York is spelled out. Reach out to us, get involved, tell us what's going on in your community so that we can put you in touch with basically the resources we have. A lot of times people don't understand the Freedom of Information Law and the FOIL process. We're more than happy to walk you guys through all that, and just reach out to us so you can get into the conversation, and so that you can start a conversation with your elected officials, because too often that's not happening. So always look us up, reclaimnewyork.org. You can always reach out to me on that site. My contact information's on there, and hopefully one of these days we'll get the slideshows working and we can get something working. But if not, you can always find me online, and we can get people just engaged with their government. So hopefully we can have more people talking to a gentleman like this who actually has principles.
And I just also, for people that's just getting familiar with you, they like what you're saying. How can they support you? How can they volunteer, donate, whatever?
Thank you so much. The campaign has actually been surprisingly, it's picked up more steam than I even thought it would at this particular moment in time. They can go to JumaneWilliams.com, JUMAA, N is in Nancy, E is in Ernie, Williams.com. You know, I was told I was crazy when I ran the first time. I couldn't beat an incumbent, you know, and here I am. We have a very good trajectory. I was a Bernie delegate. Sorry for all the, you know, whatever. Everybody's trying to take pictures of Bernie now. I was a Bernie delegate before. You know, it was difficult to be a Bernie delegate in New York City. I'm a preschool baby. A public school baby from preschool to masters, educated in New York City public school system. I've been here my entire life. There's so many things that I've been able to affect, I think, on the local level, and I want to bring that voice to the state, because I think somebody has to be there to elevate and point out the things that are going on that for some reason people, not for some reason, I know why, but people aren't pushing back. And this is the time to do it. This is 2018, so I really hope to get everyone's support. We can do this thing, and you know, whether it's funds, we're not a billionaire campaign, we're grassroots. So $5, $10, $20 is very impactful.
That's right.
Or just jumping on to help volunteer. I apologize that I have to go.
No, it's
I
okay.
definitely want to come back here.
No, the door's open. Just let us know.
The door is open.
Tell
Let us help
Martha,
your
send me a
campaign.
text.
Got you.
We got you. You come on the show, man,
Appreciate you,
anytime,
everybody.
man.
Yeah, and that, just when you run, just to, you know, deal with issues and just, you know, just to join the conversation about whatever we talking about. You know,
Appreciate
anytime.
that. Peace,
Yeah,
everybody.
All right, thank
got
you,
a
brother.
seat here for you, bro.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right, my brother. It's always a pleasure.
Nice.
Oh, grab a copy. The new papers right here. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, one thing that I wanted to say was that the discussion reminds us that the reason our local elections are important is not just because we're selecting officials, but also it gives us an opportunity for a much deeper level of civic involvement and
Yes.
engagement. And I know that that's one of the missions of Reclaim NY, is to really get people to think beyond just a sort of momentary involvement in the political process through elections, but a more kind of sustained involvement that I think that we've been making a kind of halting moves towards over the past couple of years. One thing that has happened in the city of Mount Vernon, thanks to the leadership of Damon and Brother Jeff and Yana, former council member Yana Edwards, amongst others, is the enactment of the Civilian Review Board legislation. And this is a little different, everyone. It's a different model of civic involvement than just going out and voting. It's coming to the regular council meetings. It's preparing model legislation. Do y'all prepared that legislation? You went out and searched for best practices?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. I mean, it was an ordeal, man. And big shout out to former councilman. I was going to say Jumaane Williams, but that's not Johanna Edwards, right? I was big shout out for pushing it forward, and it's a very good piece of legislation, and it also has a form of subpoena power, meaning that if an officer is subpoenaed to come before the CCRB, and he refuses to come before, every day that he doesn't come, he loses accrued time. So whether it's vacation time, personal time, anything is accrued. So every day that he misses to come before the CCRB to answer questions, he's going to lose time. Because we've learned before with seeing on certain issues that when officers were subpoenaed on issues, they just didn't show up to the city council. Now, this is the city council. They didn't show up at all. And there wasn't no repercussions in them not showing up. As a sworn officer of the state, they have an obligation. So we looked at the legislation and said, how can we change that? And it was a problem with CCRBs throughout the nation that a lot of politicians didn't want to put subpoena power in it. So what we did was, we don't call it subpoena power. We just say, look, you will be subpoenaed to come. You don't have to. You just lose your time. We if that's what you want to choose.
Is it a day for a day, or is it?
It's a day for a day. Okay. So if we subpoena you to come before the CCRB August 1st, right? Mm-hmm. And you want to say, I ain't going. So every day that you don't go after August 1st, we're going to take a day of accrued time.
Nice.
As simple as that. So it's all up to the officer how much time he wants to lose before he wants to come before the CCRB and speak on the situation.
Now,
And
what if
that's
they don't
just-
have a crew time?
Everybody has a crew
No.
time.
What if you've used up your?
Everybody has a crew time.
Then you
Then you
subsequent.
then you'll be in the negative. Then
Okay, you'll be negative.
January 1st of next year.
So you lose.
No vacation.
You might want
Come into work.
Well, you might end up with no time because see, if you ain't got no time and you fooling us not to come in front, and you just want to wait all to January next year, you're gonna lose all your time. So you won't have no time for the next year neither. I mean, it'd be for common sense. I mean, people with common sense. If you didn't do anything wrong, come before. Even if you want to bring your union delegate or whatever, you're not going to get around it. They voted on it already, so that's passed. There's nothing you could do about that. Mm-hmm. So right now they're worried about the money that is attached to it, and I believe it was only $30,000, for the operating budget. But then Lisa Copeland, listening to the arrested mayor, he's talking about he wants to get $100,000. What? Dude, why would you prolong this, right? And why would you listen to somebody who's already been arrested for money issues? So the whole thing is like, and where was he going to get it from the Amani school? Another 100,000. Oh, I'm sorry, but anyway, so where is he going to get it? So I mean, it needs to pass, and the next board of estimates, right? They need to just pass it. I don't understand. It's $30,000. From what I was told, the line is already budgeted there. They just have to approve the money and move. You don't need $100,000. It's not a unit, right? It's just people giving their own time. If the Board of Ethics can do the work that they do for free, right? Then just pass $30,000. Most of that money is needed to be for flyers, pamphlets, website, information to the public. The rest is people giving their time that will volunteer to do the job. So I don't understand why it's so hard and why they think they need more than $30,000 to do the job. But it's accountability, and that's what we need.
It absolutely is, and I think that's a perfect example of kind of what Reclaim likes to see as a goal for almost every community to have, that you have some kind of civilian oversight directly when it comes to government officials who may not be acting as they should. And certainly, I think you brought up a great point that they should be allowed to have their union rep with them. They should be able to properly defend themselves. But at the same time, you shouldn't be able to just stonewall any kind of transparency or any kind of reform effort simply because you don't want it to happen.
Right.
Let the process play out. Let it work itself out. If you're innocent, that's great. But if you're guilty, there's no reason that this should be continuing. Right. There's no reason you should still be doing these corrupt things or these bad things you're doing when there's a method in place to try and stop it, and there is a template for how other governments can put into a similar system.
Absolutely. And I think, former Commissioner Kelly, I mean, when he came on the show, I mean, he was for it. He was for a civilian complaint review board with subpoena power. And he said it here on this show. So, it's good when you have police management that understand the need of a civilian complaint review board, but it's also good for the community to understand that the Civilian Complaint Review Board is not anti-police. It's the community taking control of their police department. And I've always said the black community and poor communities are the only communities that don't have a say in the policies and procedures and how their police department is run. You could go to any other ethnic community, right? They have a say in it. They don't do the same thing as they do in Mount Vernon in Scarsdale. They won't do that because that person that they treated wrong, right, after that cop pulled off, that person's going right to the police department, right? When you have murder victims' families that don't hear from the police department for 18 months, something's wrong. Something's wrong. And where is where is the accountability for that? Where is the humanity in treating the people like they're humans? And this is not directed at any person personally. This is directed at the system, right? And if you're listening to what I'm saying, and if you get upset, oh well, because I'm not worried about that. Malcolm said, right, when you throw a rock in a pack of dogs, the only one that's going to holler is the one who got hit.
Yep.
Right. So this is not at you personally, but if you are getting upset, you need to check yourself. You need to check yourself, because we sworn as a law enforcement officer, we sworn to protect and serve. We took an oath. It's not just about overtime and getting our pension up. You understand? Because that's what a lot of us want to do, is work overtime and get our pension up. It's not about that. It's service. That's second. That's second. That is definitely second. And so we have to come to the reality that we have to take responsibility of our community.
And the only way you're going to do that is to get involved.
Thank
Get
you.
involved with that civilian review board. Get involved and go into the city council meetings. We're on Facebook right now. Use Facebook. All your elected officials are on Facebook. They're on Twitter. You don't have to go to the city council meetings, let's say, if you're working. If you got a job, or if you have kids, you have life that gets in the way, there's other ways for you to get involved. It's simply taking the initiative to do it. Because they'll listen if you get 30 people to like your Facebook post of, hey, why aren't you addressing this? That's going to catch their attention.
Well, we do like 3,000-4,000.
Yeah.
But, we have to. I think social media has been an equalizer for the people against government. I understand a lot of the fake news stuff, and I get that too. But all in all, people are on social media more, and they're available to get information. I was talking to one of a friend of mine who's a correctional officer. He's also a union delegate, and he knows nothing that's going on. I said, dude, you got to get on Facebook and get in the groups, and then you'll find out what's going on. Yep. You have to get. Even though if you don't like social media, just create an account, put up some things that you like, but get in the groups, and you could be informed. Some people use social media for BS, but I use it to be informed and to inform. And I think that's what's the great thing about social media. And now we're reaching even more people through live. So we have to utilize that, and we have to teach other people to utilize that.
And like you said, information is power.
Yes.
The more information you got, the more powerful your voice is, and the more informed you can have your friends be. Too often people get this information, or they find something out and they keep it to themselves. Spread the word. Get your friends involved in it. Tell your neighbors, hey, this is going on. You should know about it. Use Facebook for that too. If you have friends on Facebook, utilize that platform for the benefit of all, not just for the benefit of yourself.
Any last words, Lorraine?
Yeah, people need to keep an eye on the city of Yonkers, because they have term limits, and the mayor's looking to overturn them.
Wow, really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What's up with the day about laying off 200 people?
That's it.
That's
every year.
Every
year.
Because first there's a hiring freeze and then the layoff.
Before, when Senator Spano was senator, he would come in at the last minute, literally in a white limousine, popping out, coming in through the town, so that people could see, look, he delivered the money at the last minute. That's the kind of show they have going on here.
Can you reach out to Barry and see when he's available to come on the show? Because the article specifically mentioned the fire department.
Yeah, the mayor's not very nice to them.
Well, that's why we want Barry to come on.
Absolutely.
Because it specifically went out to the fire department.
Yep.
And their raises.
Right.
And
because you don't kiss butt.
And I don't, I could see if you just say citywide, but when you specifically,
Target,
reach out to Barry,
and
Barry Magoo's a friend of the show. He's a good guy, man.
And if you're listening, Barry, give me a call.
Yeah. Well, we'll hit him anyway.
Yeah, I'm gonna hit him regardless, though.
Yeah, and let's see.
Last words, Bob.
Oh, well,
30 seconds or less. No, go ahead.
good seeing everyone. Thanks to all our guests for coming on, and I'll see everyone next week.
Yeah, well, actually, I don't have any last. There's a minute left, so we want to thank everybody for tuning in. We want to thank all our guests for coming in. Definitely want to continue the conversation with you at any point. And welcome the councilman to come back as well. Hitting the streets this week. The new issue, Black Westchester, is it there? Yeah, it goes like that. The new issue. Make sure you get a copy of that.
Joe Spezio, you're on the cover.
Come on down.
You're welcome to come on the show, Joe.
Yo, and if you're listening, you could be doing anything else right now, but you decide to ride with us, and we greatly appreciate it. This is Black Westchester Presents, the People Before Politics radio show, every Sunday night, 6 to 8 on InTheMixRadio.com. Until next week, peace.
22 million black victims of Americanism are waking up, and they're gaining a new political consciousness, becoming politically mature. And as they develop this political maturity, they're able to see the recent trends in these political elections. Any minority that has a block of votes that stick together is in a strategic position. Either way you go, that's who gets it. You're in a position to determine who go to the White House and who stay in the doghouse. You're the one who has that power. You and I have never seen democracy. All we've seen is hypocrisy. When we open our eyes today and look around America, we see America not through the eyes of someone who has enjoyed the fruits of Americanism. We see America through the eyes of someone who has been the victim of Americanism. We don't see any American dream. We've experienced only the American nightmare. We haven't benefited from America's democracy. We've only suffered from America's hypocrisy. And the generation that's coming up now can see it and are not afraid to say it. 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 And are not afraid to say it.